And if you're more in the ego, then you're going to sense survival fear, this angst that you've got to get yours, that it's all about getting.
Through spiritual practices, you go beyond the sensory realm and you enter into a field where you see, not with eyesight, but with insight, that everything is connected. The scientists, the quantum scientists would call it a unified field that is everywhere in its fullness, that is undivided.
That's what being awake means, is to say, well, I'm dancing in this illusion of separateness, but I'm not separate.
For once an individual is broken through, then all the things on the surface that seem separate begin to work together for our good, because we're now in tune with everything on the invisible level. So you end up working not harder, but you end up working a lot cleaner, a lot easier, because you're in tune with all of life. So you're not trying to make something happen on the surface, you're trying to make something welcome on the invisible side of life. So oneness is the primary principle, it's the linchpin of power. We're at one with God, one with love, one with life, one with all the power that there is.
Until we're willing to embrace the totality of our humanity and our divinity, we can never be in oneness, because we're taught to say, I'm not that. We're taught to say, you know, I see something I don't like, so I don't want to be that, and we push that part of ourselves aside.
And at times, all of us, including myself, at times find it hard to be at one with someone or someones that either don't agree with us or that have values that would be we believe to be totally destructive.
These days, I'm having a lot of trouble with phony people. And I can see that I don't like that part of myself, that I'm always searching for ways to be more authentic and more real and show more of myself, even as a teacher.
I finally went to take my first nap in 40 plus hours. I really don't know. It was kind of timeless there. And I found an apartment building that had been completely abandoned. And so I went into the lobby of this apartment building, and I found a couch, and I dusted it off, and I laid down on the couch with my face against the back of the couch, and I cuddled up, and I bundled up, and probably about a half hour into my sleepless nap, I could feel the little man, the first victim that we found, the little man in the suit. I could feel him kneeling behind me, and I could see it vividly. He was kneeling behind me, his disfigured face staring at the back of my head. I could feel his breath on the back of my neck, and I was pretty terrified. And I just laid there for, I don't know how long it was, 5 or 10 minutes, just thinking, what is he doing? And I was still and quiet long enough for that voice, that voice, whatever you want to call it, my internal voice, that said to me very loud and clearly, this could be your Vietnam, or ... And it just left me kind of hanging like that. I didn't know what the ... was, but I knew what the this could be your Vietnam meant, having grown up seeing all of the ex-vets with all of their drama that they've brought back from the war and their flashbacks. Having just had my first Ground Zero flashback, I knew that this could be something that could stay with me that way for the rest of my life, and it could probably trouble my future. And I knew that the answer to the or was back out on the Rebel. So I got up and I suited up again, and I put my mask on, and I walked around the building, and as I rounded the corner, they had put up a new work light, and it was this very bright, brilliant light. And everything just seemed so bright and so brilliant that I was like just struck. And I just looked around at all these people, and everything just instantly appeared different to me. And I stood there with tears in my eyes. It felt like the world was in slow motion. I was watching people go by, and all I could see was just spirits crossing and spirits working and chain gangs of spirits. And it was so clear to me that everything was interconnected, and it was all one big body of God. Everybody had dropped their egos, they had dropped their identities, they had dropped their rank, and they were working together for the greater good of all. And I was so lit up with possibility for humankind of what it can be like when we all are working together in this way. And I could really get beyond concept what oneness was. Knowing that the entire world was experiencing what it was experiencing, all the separation and fear and chaos that was going on in the world, here I was standing there experiencing the greatest bliss and beauty of my life. And I remember just wishing that the world could see this situation through my eyes.
When I first decided to be on this spiritual journey, I was really looking to become a better me. And my sister always told me that I was angry and I was selfish and self-absorbed and these whole list of characteristics that I didn't want to be. So I started working on becoming this nice person. And I learned how to talk in a nice voice. And I learned how to give things away that I had if you wanted them. I did all these things. And then I went to a seminar one day, and I'm standing there and everybody's looking at me. In the middle of this seminar, this woman shouts out, "You're a bitch." And I thought, well, I know that. How does she know? And she said to me, "Let me ask you something, Debbie. If you were remodeling a house and you were 6 weeks late and $20,000 over budget, do you think it might help to be a little bitchy?" And all of a sudden, a light went on, because I thought if I just got rid of all my bad qualities, and believe me, I have plenty, that somehow that would make me a good person. The piece I was missing is that every dark quality of mine came bearing gifts.
And you can go down the list. Things that we see that are very negative oftentimes have the effect of taking us to the next stage of our evolution. You take somebody like a George Bush, he was an evolutionary trigger. He's galvanized the peace movement, parts of the peace movement that had never spoken to each other in many years, since the 60s. He comes along with a war ethic and a preemptive strike war ethic. Peace movement starts talking. So he actually was a very positive force for the evolution of many positive things on the planet.
See, if I want to grow and evolve spiritually, I have to take my projection off of them and own and embrace that part of myself.
We have to be lovers of humanity. We have to be lovers of ourselves, and even seek to love that which our ego or our mental perception would say, you know what, I can't love that.
I'm a phony bitch. Now the question is, how am I going to love myself being a phony bitch?
Go within and embrace it anyway.
And even as I say this, they're probably going to bleep me out, because nobody can bear that they might be a phony bitch. So then they've got to shut me down, and we all have to pretend like we're not that. People get confused in this conversation because they'll say, well, I'm not a murderer, or I'm not a rapist. But I would say, find out what kind of person would be a murderer. What kind of person would be a rapist? Those are the questions that we must ask ourselves, because maybe a rapist would be somebody who's wounded or sick. We all have a wounded part of ourselves. We all have a sick part of ourselves. We all have a twisted part of ourselves. And even though we'd like to fit into the ego's ideal of being a perfect human being, we're not. We're all that there is. And when we can open our hearts and have compassion for the part of us that might murder, we have no idea that if we're capable of that, especially if we're living and watching this film. But maybe in the right or wrong circumstances, we are all capable of anything. The most beautiful, glorious act of greatness, and what we would consider one of the most horrible crimes against humanity. And when we embrace all of ourselves, knowing that we're both human and that we are divine, well, voila, all of a sudden you have a whole human being, and what you feel is oneness.
I was married to a woman who was in so many ways the embodiment of all the things we're talking about. Linda has always been such an inspiration for me, and I know for so many other people, because of her kindness and her beauty. When my daughter and I were in Minnesota with family, we woke up the next morning to hear that 2 men had broken into her apartment and had killed her. The anger and the grief and the profound sadness for me was overwhelming.